In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome to another episode of Power 103 with Dr. Morris and Dr. Sanders, the Power 103 experience. And tonight, I have my wonderful co-host with me tonight, Dr. Sanders, coming all the way live here from Chicago. And we have a topic that we would like to discuss tonight. And the topic is, are there any good people living in the hood? I want to start out playing some music. I'm going to play two songs, and then we're going to get into this topic about um, good and bad people living in the hood and the stereotypes that come with good and bad people living in the hood. So let me play some music real fast, and um, and then we'll get started with our conversation for tonight. Good and bad.
I'm sitting here thinking about you, girl, trying to figure out why you keep coming back to me. But you tell me you love me, but you have the other guy. Yeah. You tell me you don't love him, but you keep on playing these games. You keep running back to me, yeah. And you stay gone for a long time and you break up. Have you come back to me like you already got? See, I just don't understand, yeah. Why you keep running these games on me? You want me to be fair, then just me be free. Why you wanna keep wasting my time? Playing with my mind, girl. Yeah, yeah. Will you stop playing those games? Will you stop playing those games? Won't you? Would you stop playing those games? See something just ain't right when you come back. Banging on in door in the middle of the night. You've been standing outside in the pouring rain. Then you tell me he threw you out, now he's gone insane. Oh, oh. Why does it treat you so bad? You keep running back to me. Then when things go wrong, you run right back to me. I'm trying to love you, but you're trying to love us. Too, you're breaking my heart, and you're breaking my heart, and all you really cares about you. Please stop playing these games, stop playing that stuff. Why you wanna break my heart? Why you wanna break my heart? And you're trying to love too. When you stop playing those games, when you stop playing those games, won't you? When you stop playing those games, see something just ain't right when you come back. When you stop playing those games, when you stop playing those games, won't you. Can't just stop playing those games. See something just ain't right when you come back. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. By the time we used to have all those laughing lines. Oh, I miss you, those kisses and hugs and how we made love. What a time we used to have. Oh, I miss you, girl, that smile on your face and the way you looked at me. Made me love you even more. Oh, how I miss you, girl. You're my everything, you are my sunshine. Oh, oh, what a time we had, girl. How I miss you from the bottom of my heart. How did I let you go now? I do, all I do. I think of you all day and all night. You made me feel so complete. You were all I had. When we made love, it was so real. I wonder to myself how I made you feel. What a time we used to have. What a time we had, girl. How I miss you from the bottom of my heart. What a time we used to have. Oh, what a time we used to have. Yeah.
And we are back. We are Power 103, the station that empowers the people. Tonight we have Dr. Morse and Dr. Sanders in the studio, and we're having a conversation about are there any good people living in the hood? I am going to start out reading a small passage from the book of John. John 1:46 says, it's just a small piece. It says, Nazareth, can any good thing come from there? And this was Philip talking to Nathaniel after talking to John. And Philip was talking to Nathaniel. He told Nathaniel that there was going to come a Christ, a Savior coming from a place called Nazareth, which Nazareth was a small mud and brick town that all the cities around it would not even go there because they looked down at this place because they saw it as a hood, and they would not go down to Nazareth. And that was the reason why Philip said to was talking to Nathaniel about the Christ that was going to come from a brick and mud, a small city that had about 100 to 400 people living inside of it. The big cities, again, they looked at the cities around um, um, Nazareth would look at them like they were poor people. And they had a stigma about even going down there because they said it was just a poor place. And I am going to read, um, I did a little research, a little background of how the projects and public housing was created. And this is what I found. It says in the United States, the federal public housing was officially created by the Housing Act of 1937. It was the Warner and Stegall Act, which was signed into law by Franklin D. Roosevelt on September the 1st, 1937. Why was public housing created? Number one, it provided decent, safe, and affordable housing for low
Mm-hmm.
families. Number two, to replace unsafe slums and overcrowded housing that existed in many cities. Number three, it created jobs during the Great Depression by funding construction projects. Number four, it improved public housing and living conditions. Who was it created for? Public housing was created primarily for low income families, working class families who could not afford safe housing. It was created for people living in poor, overcrowded, or unhealthy conditions. Although
Mm-hmm.
public housing was intended to help low income Americans of all races, many local housing authorities operated segregated housing projects. Let me read that again. Although public housing was intended to help low income Americans of all races, many local housing authorities operated segregated housing projects especially in the South, in the early years, especially in the South. Now, the question is, why are people still living in the hood generations later? It was one because of historical discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
For much of U.S. history, Black Americans faced legal segregation, housing discrimination, and barriers to homeowners and wealth building. Practices such as redlining made it difficult for many Black families to buy homes in the neighborhood where property values increased over time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
Home ownership has been one of the primary American families was American families build wealth because
Mm-hmm.
many Black families were included from housing and lending opportunities for decades. Wealth has often been harder to pass from one generation to the next.
Mm-hmm.
It was concentrated poverty. When many low income families live in the same neighborhoods, residents may have less access to quality schools, jobs, transportation, healthcare, and business investments. It was education and employment challenges. Schools in poor neighborhoods often underfunded, and job opportunities may be farther away or harder to access, making economic mobility more difficult. Family and community factors. Like all communities, families face different challenges, including unemployment, incarceration, health issues, and economic instability, which can affect future generations. Public housing was never intended to be permanent for generations.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed as affordable housing assistance, but in some areas there have not been enough pathways to higher incomes,
Mm-hmm.
affordable home ownership, or movement into other housing options. It is important to note that not all Black Americans live in public housing, and most do not.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of Black families have moved into middle class home own homes, run businesses, and live in a variety of communities. The question is really why poverty remains concentrated in some neighborhoods, and the answer involves a complex mix of historical and present day factors than race alone. So let's talk. Dr. Sanders, I am
Mm-hmm.
going to open the floor up to you. I'm going to pass the mic to you. and I will close out this conversation. Dr. Sanders, the floor is yours.
Hey, God bless, God bless, God bless. Yes, I had cousins that were actually living in Chicago public housing. Um, you had a lot of families from the South they came up to the city, which is the north, to live better, to have better, better jobs, better decent places to live. But as you mentioned about segregation, that's one of the things that they did. One of my dearest friends, he passed away, Khalik Lotman. He is a native. He was a native of New York. And I was watching on Netflix, I believe it was President Trump's grandfather or her
Yeah,
father built
it,
the projects in the Bronx.
it was his father. Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. So look, I was doing my research on that one
yeah,
a long time ago, and I'm like, what? And it was supposed to be for the Polish immigrants, if I'm not mistaken, according to what I saw on Netflix. But it ended up changing, and a lot of the people that struggled living in public housing, especially up here in Chicago, we had the Robert Taylors, we had the Ickeys, we had the Hillets, we had Cabrini Green. Good times, excellent, choice to talk about because here you have a family. James is the head of the household. He's a husband. Florida's trying to make sure that the kids have, decent meals on the table. But he could never really find a job. It was always either a hustle job, if a factory let him off, or he couldn't get a full-time job at the docks, or he was doing a car wash. He had unstable employment. And the family was always going through. And it was not they were going through because of who they were, it was because of the system. And what he was trying to do, here you have a man that don't really have the full education, but was still willing to make sure that his family was provided for. Florida had to go back to school later on to learn how to get her GED, a high school diploma, so she could be able to get a job. And what did she end up doing? Driving a bus. The children were gifted. You had JJ, an artist. You had Michael that wanted to be an attorney, a lawyer, a judge. And then you had Thelma that actually was doing what they call creative dancing. That was fine art. She knew how to write plays, scripts, but she came out of the projects as well. So here in Chicago, let me talk about Chicago. It was okay, as you said in the research, helping those to get from point A to point B. But then here you have the system that continues to tell you you have no right to have any type of housing. When you mentioned about that act, um, back in 1937, of course, that's when Chicago CHA was founded with the housing. And then you're talking about the years of being a slum. Well, here in Robert Taylor, according to what I saw on a documentary on YouTube, was that it boxed in the residents like they were animals, like they were caged animals to control them because the public housing was not doing their job in making sure that allowed the residents had sufficient and adequate living. They caged them in, they fenced them in, not being able to do certain things in the community. Like you said, you have the public school system that was literally a joke. But a lot of the kids still went through it, and then gangs found it an opportunity to do what? To want to run it because no one was paying attention. As we mentioned earlier, when they started tearing down the projects, trying to do a transformation, then they still have them in a, I would say, in a bubble that, oh, we're going to give you a new place to live. We're going to remodel the place. We're going to tear down the projects because I never understood why they were so high in the first place. But I guess the more families you had, the more you want to put in matchbox apartments. I had high school friends that lived in the projects, but I didn't look growing up as a little girl. I never lived in the projects, but I had friends that did. I didn't think of the projects to me as being a dangerous place. It was that in life you become stagnated with things, opportunities, and not able to get where you want. Not because you don't want to, is how the system is set up. So I had cousins that lived in the row houses. I would visit them, but I didn't look at it as this the projects. I looked at them as being my family. because I just wanted to be with my family. I didn't care where they lived at. Yes, did I like the buildings? It's like, so they can't clean urine out of the hallway. They can't um do something different, put some grass on the ground, let it grow, and flowers, learning agriculture, you know, doing things that make sense. Um, and the system just did not want them to grow, did not want it to develop. But a lot of them had to fight their way out and live better. You know, a bunch of my cousins that actually lived in the projects. Listen, one of them was a retired fire police chief. He retired being a firefighter. Another one did retail for 30 years. They made it out to make life better, but it's the mindset. It's almost similar, but not quite, but similar to how the incarceration is in prison. When the late Mother Consuela York here in Chicago, she taught us how to do prison ministry, and we fed the inmates. And what we would do was that we fed them. I looked at the cells, and it's like, man, let me just sit in the cell for 5 minutes. And the way that Cook County Division 6 is made, man, I'm like, how can y'all stay in this? Because it does something to your mind. And I felt so depressed about that, because it's like, why you, although you did a crime, don't mean you gotta be an animal to cage the people. A lot of them um were going to school. Even when I did ministry with my jurisdiction some years back, we went to the Ickies. Man, I couldn't get we couldn't even get the president of the evangelist department to come in the projects with us to go on the elevator, because the church folk was scared to go in the elevator to knock on the door and give them free school supplies. I'm like, they're just like us. We don't know where in life we're going to be, to where we're going to end up having to be on public housing. And like you said, it's not for you to live up for the rest of your life. It's a place to get you prepared to go further in life. But there are many successful people that have come out of living in public housing or affordable housing, which is totally different, because affordable housing go according to your income. CHA housing, they pay for your full rent. So a lot of people that literally lived in the projects, they were just like you and I, just came across some hard times and need somewhere to be. It was supposed to have been safe, but did the government make it safer for them? No, it didn't. They did not, because who ended up coming in there? What ended up coming into the project building? Rats, roaches, drug places. I mean, it's an area where it can be set up so you can be able to be just, I would say cloned in. Nobody wants to be cloned in anywhere, and that's real talk. Um, and that's the thing about that. When we talk about public housing, it's it's not a bad thing, but if it's not done right and appropriately, then people are going to be in a different mindset. It takes their regular mindset away from what they're living in. We got people that are here now. We got immigrants that come, and they're getting a lot more than what we're getting. But when public housing started developing, it was supposed to be, thank you, and it's supposed to be a place for you to be able to grow, not to stay there. And some of them become depressed. I've had clients that I worked with when I was working in social work that lived in public housing. Did I like going in the elevators, going up to the 18th floor, the 19th floor, the 24th floor? But I had a job to do. I had to see about their need. It was the need. It wasn't about, oh, you're going to be here for the rest of your life. I didn't judge anybody, because I said, listen, I don't know what hand life is going to give me or what I'm going to end up dealing with. But I may have to live in public housing. We don't know. So, you know, I don't like how the government did our people, period, that live in public housing, because they didn't care. It's like they dropped the ball on making sure that they're in a durable building where they can walk in and not get knocked upside the head, or somebody raping their little girls. Or drugs, are somebody selling drugs. I remember a guy when I was 16 years old, my very first job was working at Zulu Pharmacy and Drugstore. I was making $4 an hour. And there were two project buildings about a block from where I live. And one of the guys, he was a gangbanger. But when I would look at the buildings, I'm like, why these things look like matchbox apartments? And so, but it was so much activity because it's like the gangs and the drug dealers, they chose these areas to run a lot of their operations out of. And some of them made it out and some of them didn't. Needless to say, this particular gentleman got killed because they were housing guns and weapons, shotguns in the apartments, and it was gang territory because over here in Chicago we had the Black Gangster Disciple, the Vice Lords, the L. Rookers. We had it all. You name it, we had it. But it was a place for them to do illegal things, and the government never paid attention. So a lot of them had to fight, as the song said, keeping your head above water, making a way when you can. They didn't come here for that. They came here to have a better life. But when you talk about the government did not care, does not care. Michael Jackson made that very clear in his song. He said, all I really want to say is they don't really care about us. So when they lived in the projects, it was not that, oh, I just want to live in the projects the rest of my life. This looks good here. No, it didn't. It was a temporary move for them to transition. And a lot of them that were reared in the projects, their parent or parents were left with the responsibility of raising more than one child or children. And the father walked out of the home, wasn't able to become successful as a father, and left the mothers destitute to rear the children. And then they're trusting their kids while they're going to work, working at Spiegel's, or some of them had to take little retail store jobs at the town. We had Litton's, Weeboats, Goldblatt, Sears, Montgomery Wards. We had all those stores, FW Woolworth. My aunt had 6 kids, 5 boys and 1 girl. She worked at Walgreens, but she didn't live in the projects. But a lot of my other cousins who were living there, they wasn't there because I want to be here. Their mom and dad had no other means to buy a house. My late aunt, rest her soul, bought a house for her family, and back then was like worth $11,000. Now that house is worth $250,000 because people did not have the job or the adequate resources to be able to get what they want. So they were forced to be able to live. Some of them, not all of them, and most of them headed straight, and I'm talking about Chicago, straight from the north to the west side, where Dr. King stayed at. That's one of the things that depressed Dr. King, was that how even living on the west side had a different and a lot of folk may get upset when I say this, but this is what I want them to understand. I'm not going there. Where I'm going is, when King got killed, he stayed on the west side before he got killed. The west side never recouped from that era. Their spirit of what happened when they burned up the west side of Chicago. There weren't many projects over there. There were many, like a lot of apartment buildings or maybe some walk-ups, but a lot of them had apartments over there. Houses are in different areas of the west side of Chicago. They're not like the south side. We had a lot of projects. Caprini, Robert Taylor. We had Stateway Gardens. We had what is that? Latrobe Court, which is on 47th and Western, and then you had All Gale Gardens, which is out this way, out south. It's further south by Eden Green area, and you had those projects there, and then you had the walk ups. Then you had the row houses near in Inglewood, and people had no other choice because that was the cheapest place they could live. But a lot of them were able to come out of it, and became successful doctors. A lot of them became, politicians. A lot of them married and had families. Like I said, my cousins made it out. But what get me is that when the system set us up, they're not setting us up to become successful. They're setting you up for failure. Because what happens in a lot of the areas, like Robert Taylor was right across the street from the first Church of God in Christ in Chicago, Robert's Temple, right there. And one of the mothers told me, because I would ask, was it for you to live there? They said it was real nice. Had working elevators, had grass, had laundry room. But that's the only place they could come from after coming from the South. But then we get heavy into all of the drugs. You have the killings and shootings. Then it became a violent ground. Chicago Public Housing did not want to reinvest into rehabbing the buildings. The mice, the rats took over. You know, Shootings started to occur. The school system, kids are sitting in schools that made them depressed because you sit in a classroom, and I was reared in the Catholic school before I went to public school. I had a culture shock. But the public schools, the way that they're made so big and ain't like it's almost like England schools. And they had nothing that was livelihood to kind of keep their mind going, but the kids went through it. My mom went to Shakespeare Elementary School. She went to Forestville Elementary School. She turned around, she graduated at 17 from DuSable High School. But we never lived in the projects. But we had family that did. But we didn't look at them as project people. We looked at them as family. But the government was so busy in trying to fix a situation that became segregated because there were waiting lists. Even to this very day, they still have waiting lists. Although they have torn down the project buildings because the late Bishop Lewis Henry Ford, he actually bought a project building next door to St. Paul Church of God in Christ, his church that he founded and established. But as of now, it's called St. Paul Community Developmental Ministries because he bought that. Bishop Ford even opened up our first tent revival, a convocation in a tent revival across the street at Robert Taylor Homes. That he gave that area for them to be able to come to church. That was a witnessing strategy that the late Bishop Lewis Henry Ford used because he said, I want all of the people that live in the projects to come over to our convocation for free. That's what he did. So, and it's videos to prove it. We all on YouTube with it. So when it comes down to dealing with segregation, which took place in the 50s and 60s, the high rise era, that was the worst thing to do. And I could never understand, Apostle, why would you want to build something so high to keep everybody down? The elevators are going to break down. People got to walk down the flight of stairs. Man, I remember these two project buildings that was right behind the late James Stovall, Pastor James Stovall, who founded Bright Star Church of God in Christ. There were two project buildings right there by him. Man, my school was up the street, right, like maybe 2 blocks over. And guess whose church was up the block? The late Marvin Yancey. His church, Fountain of Life Church, was 2 blocks from that church. But they would throw refrigerators out the window, stoves out of the window. Not that they were being mean and nasty. Housing did not take care of the people and did not give them an adequate sense of hope. They kept them like that. They kept them where they can't do this. Women that were married couldn't tell public aid they were married to a man because public aid would come through their house looking for toothbrushes to see how many toothbrushes in the house. And a man in there. Claudine tell the story. Claudine didn't live in the projects. She lived in a raggedy building that the landlords even didn't want to fix. And they would get the rent money. And I blame the system not caring for people, but you made it segregated. So now you got everybody over here. Then you had Leclerc Courts. That's the name of it. Leclerc Courts, where a lot of the Mexicans or the Polish live. So everywhere, Cabrini Green, which Good Times is a depiction of Cabrini Green on the west side. So a lot of the people, the residents that lived in the projects, that's all they had. That's all they knew. And their voices were never heard. Their voices were never heard. Their voices were never respected. And then when they started tearing them down, then they want to rebuild shorter buildings, but say, okay, if you want to be on in Chicago public housing, you now need to get a job. And you got to work so many hours per month in order for you to keep your voucher. Because when you get in public housing, you are issued a voucher, and that voucher covers whatever your income level is, whatever your ratio income level is. That's how they determine what they're gonna pay. Some of them pay no rent. Some of them pay $5 a month for rent. Some of them pay my late aunt. My late aunt lived in. It was not the project, but she was issued a voucher, and she was issued a voucher with an apartment building that was real nice, and her rent was only $5. She was married, but she couldn't report it. Why? Because they did not want you really to have a two-parent household. They, the women had to lie and struggle to be able to survive. But there are always and have always been good people that have come out of the housing, the public housing. You know, have become successful. As my late friend Khalik Lotman said, some of the things that we see on television is actually what they had to go through in public housing. When you talk about the federal takeover, in 1995, after the years of mismanagement, then you have the declining conditions. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, they seize control of it because they're like, well, why they living like that? But see, I'm not going to blame Chicago Housing Authority just by itself. There's another culprit to the picture. You started this in the cities, like you said, with Trump's father building it for the Polish immigrants, and all of a sudden, all the African Americans live there. What happened to the Polish immigrants? That they moved out and became what? They worked 2 or 3 jobs, but it's temporary. But there are good people. I have a lot of associates that I have done work with down through the years that always would tell the story. But when I would go and look, because I'm the outsider coming in, I'm like, wow, this is the way the government does. I hold the government accountable. I don't hold the residents accountable. I can't even hold the mayors accountable. But when you are part of the system, you've got to take some responsibility. You have to make some noise. So those that have been in public housing or are still in it, there is a chance for them now, those who are still in it, to get out of it. Because now they have first time home buyers program for you to be able to know how to buy a house. What do you want? How do you want to change the thing? Because you can't let nothing sit on top of you and not make no noise. That's like somebody suffocating you. Okay, suffocate me. I ain't gonna say nothing. No, you got to make some noise. But as a leader, and here in Chicago, I don't have a violent beef with my mayor, but I don't think he understands the systematic approach to how to deal with our people that are yet residing in public housing. I don't look at them as a segregated group. I don't look at them as that. I look at them as my brother and sister, because Apostle, something can happen and I lose everything and they have to get public housing.
That's right.
We don't know which way the wind go blow. We don't know what happened to our jobs. We don't know right now all the education that we put into our degrees. Now they're saying, oh, we can't classify that as that they don't want to pay you for the education you went to school for. They got training programs. A lot of the training programs, Robert Taylor Fieldhouse, the late Samuel Hawkins, he was an elder in the Church of God in Christ. He had a lot of programs for the youth to be able to do some things. We were talking about that earlier before I came on your show. I said, there's a lot of things out here for young people. There's After School Matters, Chicago One. Parents get online, go and apply for your children in March. They get hired in May, and they get ready to start working in June until August. Can I go back to school? There are programs out there. They didn't have a lot of funding. They didn't. A lot of the programs that they had, Apostle, was they had the Chicago Police Department had little things where you can learn to do some things around a police station. You had to be a certain age to work a job somewhere, but there were not a lot of programs, and the churches didn't have access to grants where they could be able to bring these programs into their church. They didn't really have tutoring. The school system didn't have a lot of money, so the kids had some of the kids, and I've heard this from inmates. They had to hustle if they had to sell some uppers and downers or some pills, or they learned how to sell cocaine or crack. They had to survive. Some of them used to jump the train boxes just to go and get stuff off the train and come back and sell it to people. There was nothing out there. Now we're living in a time where we have more, but it's the fact that you need to know, and it's up to the parents and it's up to our leaders to post these things out there so children can be able to do some things. Families can be able to progress. Education. Some of the universities now are for first time college students. They can go to school for free. I work for the University of Chicago Medical Center. I'm affiliated with the University of Chicago, the college. They've got it now where you can go to school for free. There are certain courses you can take. And I said, man, I want to go back. I can't go back because I'm not a first time student. But they're torn it down now, but they still built, let's just say, a tiny lavish dwelling, but you're still under that slave of being a part of CHA. I heard a lady today that was telling the Arab how to run his business. Well, why you tell how to run the gas station? What's all that about? Because everything, which should be free. No, nothing's free. You know, we got a link card. Back in the day, it used to be food stamps, you know, in the booklet. And the public aid, you had to go and sign for it. Oh, trust me,
Mhm.
I had a lot of friends that was doing public aid. And when I had my firstborn son, I had to go through the system of dealing with public aid. I didn't like going to the public aid office having a conversation about my personal life. I'm in college, but I had a son. You know, bad engagement went bad. And then my mom like, well, you got to get on welfare. I'm like, for what? I just want to go to work because I didn't want to deal with welfare. Why? Because I did not want to be Claudine. I didn't want to be sitting in the chair asking you how many times I'm having a relationship with a man. You know, because they're determining how many more kids are you going to have. Public aid assumed that you were going, if you had one child, they're assuming, oh, you're going to have another child, or you're going to have another child, and you're going to have another. They actually would do it. They would assume. And then my mother's boss said, you got to go to public aid. Don't dress up, look nasty, smell and stink, so you can get the money. I said, so why would I demeanor myself just to get cash and food stamps and a medical card? Because if you came in there clean, the system would judge you that you got money somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I was in college. I was in college. I was a single mom in college. And I'm like, but I don't want to go to that. They had you to go through what they call a young parent program to teach you about apples, oranges, and how to cook. And I'm like, so this is what this is about. And my mom lived in Lake Meadows here. It's on the downtown South Loop. And she lived in Lake Meadows, not too far from Ebony Jet Magazine Company, which is now owned by public housing.
Wow.
It's called TK Lawless on 35th and King Drive. 3 tall buildings, 24 stories high. Used to be regular apartments. Guess who got a hold to them to save them? Public housing. I know
Wow.
folk that live in it. They got townhouses around it that circles that encamps it, and people that have low income, they wasn't making no money. I mean, if you look at good times, they barely could pay. Their rent was $60 a month. $60, and James could barely make it. They lived off of oatmeal, eggs, and really eating sausage was a specialty to them. Because if you look at good times, you would see how they had to fight to get the water fixed, the toilet fixed. the light fixture, bedroom doors, things like that. If you know people are residing in housing authority property, why wouldn't you want to fix it up? So where is the money going? That's been the biggest question, as they say, the $99,000 question on the honeymooners. Where's the money going? Because things wear out. They get worn. Nothing stays forever. Houses begin to settle. Roof start to come in. The structure of a property, that's why when you own a house, you got to have another account to be able to fix up the property. Well, what happened to the money to be able to make the repairs and make it better? But I did not like the Robert Taylor Housing Development because they had these fences. Um, I don't. Have you ever seen Robert Taylor Housing
Yes.
before,
Yes.
Apostle?
Yes.
So when you look at Robert Taylor Housing, let me get this. I hope they can see it. Um, the buildings. Let me go here. Look how are you able to see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Look like New York Twin Towers.
Right. So now look at the fence. Oh, the how would they call it? The fence that keeps them in there.
Wow.
And
Unbelievable.
anybody can fall through that. So the if you look at it here, these are Matchbox apartments. And then if you the movie I Love American Gangster would tell you the whole thing of how people lived.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you can filtrate drugs, prostitution, all kind of stuff in the buildings. And then it became a target for crime. So anybody, any kids, they can go, the elevator stop working, the elevator could be on 2, and you living on the 17th floor, and if the elevator don't open, now the kid is dead. Because of what? Unworking conditions. So my question has always been, who had the money?
Wow.
Where'd the money go? Where'd the money go? And then when they started falling apart, as you can see, they had no money. So
Mm.
after the years in the era of transitioning, you tore all this down. So now you got to find a place for them to go. Now with Section 8, you can get you a house. And the homeowners have to keep their house up to date. They have to follow the Section 8 guidelines in order for people to move into the house. They want everything: social security card, birth certificates, check stubs, public aid. They already, when you look on the public aid application, it will ask you what type of housing development are you living in? Because everything on a piece of paper matters. That determines where you're at. Folks don't pay attention to that. They literally don't. And a lot of times folks have been so condoned to, okay, I'm never going to get out of here. I might as well stay. No, there is a way out. But my question, Apostle, has always been, who took off with the public housing money where you could not get the buildings to be repaired? Where you could stop. We know that rats, roaches, water bugs, and all that kind of stuff. Somebody said something to me the other day. No, I heard them say something yesterday. Oh, you're from the suburbs. You're no from the city. You're not from the suburbs. The suburbs is a high place. The suburbs ain't exempt because most of the people that grew up in the projects ended up getting Section 8 in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right or wrong?
That's
So
the truth.
it don't matter. It's the fact that you have to live because of what you are dealing with. If your income is not sufficient enough, where I live 1 minute from the Obama Center in an apartment. I have a huge, big 3-bedroom apartment with high ceilings. And Apostle, my rent is $1,666. And do you think my income is right there? No. But since they put the Barack Obama Presidential Library Everything now has shot up. They're putting a 4 3 bedroom right at the corner of the alley by my apartment. And you already know the rent gonna be about $2,000.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
and they have affordable housing up the street from me, because it's a public aid office. Kind of funny, right? Public aid office, Susan Shankman School for kids that have special needs. And we're not talking about no black kids either. These are Caucasian kids that's got some serious issues, some civil issues. I put it to you like that. That's right behind where I live. It's clean, owned by the university. They just built a brand new, I think it's 6 story apartment building that has market rent, Section 8, and affordable housing. And guess what's downstairs? A karate place. Then you got Chicago Park District. Then you have one of the oldest restaurants in the city called Daly's. And then you got the Ingrams. They own their own franchise of UPS. Then you got some little dance company. Now they're redeveloping Woodlawn. We got some of everything over here now. A squash center. We ain't never heard no Metro Squash. You know, even the kids, when they played basketball in the projects, they had somewhere to go. One of the guys that I used to sing with, he talked about how he grew up in the projects. And all they had, a lot of them went to church. A lot of them, went to school. They went to public school. They couldn't afford to go to Catholic school because their parents didn't have that kind of money, or a parent didn't have that kind of money. So dad worked at the steel mill, had to get his family out. I mean, folk talked about Joe Jackson like a dog, but guess what? Joe Jackson got his family out of Indiana.
Yes, he did.
He might have been a little kind of, weird in how he did it, but he got his kids and his wife out of Indiana. And now the house is a historical landmark of where it all started at. So it's not like in Indiana. Indiana don't pay no taxes. It's a whole different world of Indiana. But even in Indiana, they don't have anything really out there because they tore up the city. Now they're trying to think about bringing the Bear Stadium to Indiana. Why you gonna do that? For what? Don't take. But my question is, where is the money? There's only 2 CHA developments that are still up to this very day. And it's on 3983 Lake Park, right where the old L. Rookins building used to be. Those are the last 2 remaining. Everything else, including computer grid, all that has been torn down. But those are the 2 Lake Management got those buildings, and it's still the same buildings. All they did was go in and just remodel some stuff. But guess what? Those are the original buildings, 3983 project buildings. I have patients that come to my clinic all the time, and they live in that building. And they work for CTA, some work for the post office. But here, we don't have these buildings anymore. And it was not to be on there for your rest of your life. It was to help you get to one area to another. But there have been many successful people that lived in Chicago public housing or New York public housing, And I was sick to my stomach because Khalik had done a video production. You know the movie Brown Sugar?
Mm-hmm.
He did a segment. Is that the same one that
Yeah.
Donald Trump's? Okay.
Yeah.
So now answer this for me. Where's 127th Street?
Is that New York?
And so the buildings, because one of my girlfriends, she lives here, and she lived on 127th Street. And she even told me, and Khalik both told me, they said the project development that was built by Trump's father was so big you couldn't even see the playground. You would only know. I never never been to the Bronx. I've been to another part of New York, but not the Bronx. But I'm like, so what are you trying to say? Is that the people cannot look at things that are normal? You know what I mean? But a lot of people successfully had to change the game and get out of the housing project development. They had a lot. They had to do a lot of stuff to eat to make ends meet, but they had to also make a better life. Whether they went from the projects to an apartment, they had to go somewhere, and they just all stayed. And I call them sardine cans because it's too tight. You know, it's too tight. And I'm like, wow. And I didn't like how the residents were living because I'm like, you all are here, and I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming the system. I'm blaming the system because why can't they live better? Why can't you reconstruct it, build little bitty shotgun houses that that you can be able to put like you do townhouses and let them live better. Even with Outgale Gardens, man, it's like a haunted town over there, and they had townhouses. Matter of fact, when Barack Obama was running for president, he went out there, and it was half of the place was boarded up. You got Rosebud Farm grocery store out there. It's like in a field, and then you got Eden Green, was another development that people were living in next door to each other. All Gale Gardens, 127th and 130th. They all lived out that way because they had nowhere else to go, and the housing kept them canned in to a system. And a lot of folk don't know. Even in Inglewood, we had some row houses. We didn't have no buildings. We had row houses. That's where my cousins grew up, in Inglewood. I began to learn Inglewood and listen more than anything because I did my medical training for Dr. Pimentel, Ray My Head and Surgery Center. A lot of the residents that lived in Inglewood came to that clinic for abortions and all kind of stuff. So what happened to the money, Apostle? That's all I want to know. What happened to the money?
Amen, amen, amen. Dr. Sanders, I want to thank you for that great conversation tonight. I want to thank you for your intellect on your view of people living in the hood. I want to come from a different aspect of
Mm-hmm.
why are people still living in the hood generations later. Um, I will say, if you um, go through New York, if people have ever visited New York City, and, excuse me, and any major cities, because you have them, we've had projects here down in Baltimore City where they have recently, over the years, knocked those projects down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there were several projects that Baltimore City had that I knew of. I visited there, hung out there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gone. There's a few that's left, but if you ever traveled, if anyone has ever traveled from the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area and had to drive 95 North or 695 North, which takes you from Baltimore, Washington, D.C. towards New York City, Connecticut, and you can bear off to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're riding through New York City, you will find that these project buildings are still standing. And when
Wow.
when John 146, when Philip was talking to Nathaniel, he said it described Nazareth as mud and bricks. So you have to look at, even during Jesus's time, that there was the project,
Mm-hmm.
that folks was living in the projects. It describes mud and brick. So you drive to New York City and you find these huge, humongous high rises look like they're reaching the sky. And
Right.
and I've never seen some red brick projects that big. Now going up 95 North, 695 North, coming from Washington and Baltimore, going up
Mm-hmm.
to New York City, you see them on your right hand side when you get to New York, and then you look across the street coming down from New York and Connecticut and wherever you're traveling back from, you see the big high rises on the other side, and they're just
Mm-hmm.
not small sections; they're huge sections of them. Now, what I'm about to say, I don't want anybody to feel like I'm picking on them because I did say I'm coming from a different point of view of why are people still in the hood generations later. Now, don't tell me that you can't make it out the hood because you have artists like Big Daddy Kane, LL
Mm-hmm.
Cool J, and Slick
Mm-hmm.
Rick, and Dougie Fresh, and the
Notorious
list
big.
and the
Yep.
list goes on and on and on and on about people
Mm-hmm.
that took advantage of their situation and got out of the projects. So now I am coming from a different point of view. So don't tell me that I can't find a job. Don't tell me that I don't have a car. Don't tell me that there's no opportunities out here for me. When we, as American people, as American Black people, take our finances that we do have and we we spend it in other things. We, instead of putting our money in the bank, instead of um, wasting our money on Ching Chang Chow's Chinese restaurant down the block on the corner, we are actually taking our black dollar and supporting other races of people. Now, what I'm about to say again, I don't want people to get offended when you are taking your money and you're investing in everybody else, but you're not investing in yourself.
In
You're not
yourself. Right.
investing your own money in your own community. I know drug dealers, and I have nothing against drug dealers, but I know drug dealers that sold drugs to the neighborhood and to people coming
Mm-hmm.
inside the neighborhood, and also took the money and fixed up the basketball courts, also
Mm-hmm.
fed the people, also during the holidays bought the kids in the hood toys and clothes and shoes and things like that. So don't tell me that we can't put our money back into our own neighborhood.
Community.
But what gets
Mm-hmm.
me, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Sanders, is I don't like the fact that we have parents who will dress their babies in baby Jordans. Now, watch this. You're spending this money that you could be investing in your own family's future on clothes that has no value, on stuff that the baby don't even know that the baby has baby Jordans on. So why are we spending our money on foolishness like that? Why are we
$1,000
support?
iPhones.
Yeah, yeah, and then you got our kids, not just the black kids, but you got children um that have the latest and the greatest iPhone 47 when I still got an Android. I'm talking
47.
tonight. And then these kids are
47.
4 and 5 years old walking around with iPhones. So we all know that iPhones are very expensive, but we
Yeah.
but we as project people, we go get the latest and the greatest and trying to impress other people in the hood that we got the latest and the greatest. What gets me, Dr. Sanders, is that you look at some of the people that's living in the projects, and again, I'm not here to tear down anybody, but I'm just coming from a different view. Why is it that you see people living in the project paying $26 a month rent, and then they're having cookouts and wasting their money at the mall, going to the mall buying $400, $500, $600 worth of clothing just to come back to the projects to impress the people in the projects? Why do you see a Cadillac Escalade or a Maserati sitting in the project, when his woman is only paying $26 a month? So again, where is the money? Where is the money going when it comes to the projects? So why do you see liquor stores that are owned by Ching Chong James in the black neighborhood? Okay,
All the time.
why do you see Italian restaurants and all kinds of other nationalities? They bring their business down to the African American neighborhood. And what gets me is that when our own black people will wake up and realize that there's a lot of money flowing through the black neighborhood. And do I blame the government? Yes, I do blame the government, but I also blame our people for not utilizing the resources that they do have. Don't tell me yet you can't find a way to work. There's the bus line. Oh, I don't want to catch the bus. We make up so many different excuses on what we don't have, what the other man is doing. Oh, the Spanish people are taking all our jobs. When are we going to get to a place as a people that we're going to realize that you think that McDonald's is below you? You think working at the chicken box place down the corner is below you, beneath you. And then you wonder why you look around that you can't find jobs, because you sit back, people sit back in the hood and complain about other people taking their jobs when you have opportunity. When a young African American young woman can go to social services in her city, and they have programs where she can go to school and they will watch her kids while she attend classes at social services. But we sit back and we complain about what we don't have. We complain about, again, other people taking our jobs and resources. We complain about the maintenance people haven't been over here to check my AC. So now I gotta go buy fans. Okay, but for the last 15 years, you've been laying in the projects, wasting your money and not taking advantage of the resources that the government is even giving out to trying to help you get out the projects, but you don't take advantage of those opportunities. So who are you blaming? Are you blaming yourself, or are you blaming the government? Who are you going to point fingers at when generations and generations and your generations of your family has been locked in the projects? Why? One, because grandma never taught mama how to do anything. Mama never taught the daughters how to do anything. And her daughters, she probably won't teach her daughters how to do anything. And this is the reason why we have generations and generations of people still living in the projects. But we need, as a people, to stop blaming other folks for what we won't do. We need to stop blaming other people for not wanting to do better. Why are we blaming everybody else, but we won't point the finger at our own selves? And this is the reason why you look around and you see other races of people getting ahead in life, because we still have that still slave mentality thought process, like a hamster on the wheel going round and around and around and around. And we can't get off of that hamster wheel. This is the problem that's going on in the community, because now you got the government making laws, and the local government making laws, and Congress made laws. And I'm going to say this, and I hope it don't offend anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Clinton created the 3-strike law. Now, what is the 3-strike law? 3 strikes, you were out. Now, when Bill Clinton created that law, it was against African American men. So you got more African American men in prison for marijuana and crack cocaine, and then you got other races of people that were selling drugs, but the black men got more prison time than the white people did. I gotta say this. And then when he created that law, the 3-strike law, now you got these people coming home from prison who can't get jobs because they have all these drug charges. So what do? Now they can't find a job. They go right back to what they know best. They go right back to the same hood that grandma lived in, that their mama lived in, that their sister lived in, their brother lived in the same neighborhood, his daughter and his son live in the same neighborhood. And he comes right back to live in the same environment that he left 10 years ago, because that's all he know how to do. Now, do I blame the government? Yes, I blame the government. Yes, I blame officials and leaders, because we have to get to a place as people, we got to watch who we voting in office.
Sure do.
Because I don't think that all these people have our best interests. Some of the people that we vote for today, some of the politicians and the local governments and the mayors of some of these cities, they don't have our best interests. And then when our black folks wake up and realize, that we are part of the problem ourselves. Now, I heard you say that I blame the government. I blame the government too, because it's a system. It's systematically done. You can't just create projects, create a project, because what is a project? This is what people need to ask themselves. What is a project from school? What is a project? It's the thesis of the outcome of what you created. It's the aftermath. It's you create something and you want to see what the outcome is going to be. When the government created those projects, they knew exactly what they were doing. It's no difference. It's no difference, Dr. Sanders, to the slave quarters during slavery time, because they were the hood. It was the projects. They were separated. Even the master separated his slaves and put them in slave quarters. And if you look at the slave quarters, they were projects. It's no difference. It's no difference today than the projects of the slave quarters and then the projects of today. And what happens is, this is the sad reality. Even though that there was historical discrimination, even though that it was wealth gap, even though that it was concentrated poverty, even though education and employment challenges and family and community factors played a part, what part are we going to understand that somehow we need to wake up as a people, and we need to find a way to get out of our situation and not stay so comfortable, because the projects were not made for you to stay there. It was a transition for you to get to the next place. And so many people has ridden the system for so long that it became a reality to them, and they think that this is the best thing since sliced bread. Folks need to realize that there's a better way. We need to take the opportunities that are given to us and we need to start thinking about getting from the place that we are. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's some people, because of transportation problems, health issues, all kinds of other things that will probably stop them from getting out the projects because of their situation. But don't get me wrong. Don't use excuses so you can ride the system after being on the system for 15 and 20 years. You've been on the system.
Or more.
Mama been on the system. Grandma been on the system. Your children are on the system, and you are still stuck in the system. Somewhere along the line, something needs to change. And I'm going to say this before we close out, Dr. Sanders. You always hear people say, this my neighborhood. This my hood. Ain't nobody else coming in here selling no drugs, or ain't nobody else coming in here doing nothing. And I'm going to say this to the rabbit mind thinking people. It ain't your hood. The hood belongs to the government, and you are placed there on an experimental trial. And when people realize that it was just an experiment to see the outcome of shoving people in a segregated area to see how they would act like lab rats.
Yep.
And this is the truth. But it bothers me when I hear people say, this is my hood. If this is your hood, then clean it up. Stop throwing trash everywhere. Go and clean up the playgrounds. Sweep the streets. Go around the neighborhood picking up the trash. If it's your hood, if you claim it like it's your hood, then go clean it up.
That's it.
Stop the complaining. Stop trying to ride the system, because it's a system, and it's a system to keep you down. It was never intended for you to get up. And I'm going to say this to the business-minded people that's still living in the hood. I'm going to say this to the people that has a business aspect or trying to start a business. If you watch Sherman Hemsley, him and Weezy, they were living in the hood.
Yep, they sure were.
But he had a business.
Yep.
He had a dry cleaning business, and he was a businessman trying to get his family out of the projects. So I say this to the people tonight. When are you going to change your mindset? When are you going to try to get you and your family out of the projects? Because we are making everybody else rich, from the liquor store on the corner, for Jim Chow Chinese restaurant on the corner. We are wasting our money trying to dress our babies up in Jordan tennis shoes and all kinds of fancy clothes. The young men are going out buying all kinds of the latest and the greatest outfits just to go to the block party around the corner, just to look good for the neighborhood. Trying to impress other Negroes in the neighborhood. So I say this. There's a reality that we need to face as a people. Again, public housing was never intended to be permanent for generations. It was designed as affordable housing assistance. Right. But in some areas, there have not been enough pathways to higher incomes, affordable house ownership, and movement into other housing options. It is important to note that not all Black Americans live in public housing, and most do not.
Nope, it
Millions
don't.
of black families have moved into middle class homes. They run businesses and live in a variety of communities. The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
question tonight is the question tonight is why poverty remains concentrated in some neighborhoods. And the answer involves a complex of historical and present day factors than race alone. This is going to be our conversation for tonight. Wake up, people. We got to do a better job at our mindset about living in the hood. Because if you look around, um, the hood was not created just for black people, but somehow it seemed like black people, the African American people, have gotten stuck there for generations and generations. And again, we have to do better, people. We have to do better. We have to stop wasting our money on other foolishness and stuff. If you look at, again, you look at the way that other races of people are bringing their businesses into our neighborhoods. So it must be a lot of money among the black community. It's got to be millions
Apostle,
and millions of dollars.
Apostle,
Yes.
I want to show you this before you close. This is an apartment building that's
Wow.
west of where I live. What I don't like is the fact that as African Americans, we need to stop having foreigners come into our communities
Yes. I
and
agree.
get these apartment buildings like this.
I
Turn
agree.
around. Pangea is one of the most rip-off management company there is. They make you want to fight them physically. I'm serious. And they go into the area community. They go into the African American community. They get these apartments. They halfway, half behind it, fix it up. And then our people start to rent from them. And then what they do is, and folk need to understand this, when foreigners come to the US, they're not going to Evergreen Park, Oaklawn, Hickory Hills, Palos Hills. They're not going to Oak Park in the Austin area. They're coming in the low class area
Yes.
because what they do is they do a research of how many residents are living on public assistance and what type of place they live in. That's why the Arabs can come and get the most nastiest store and make it a store in the community, a beat up old building, and they will work around that building. You know what I'm talking about, Apostle,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh
put
yeah.
a little jinky freezer in there with some old meat and all
Yep.
that other kind of stuff. Going to get stuff, groceries, and all that, and they know who lives in the area. Now, understand that although the apartment may look like this, but that don't mean you got to live like it.
That's right. That's right.
You don't have to. And as you said, there are more resources and information that are out here. By the building, there are so many men and women that are into masonry, bricklaying, you know, that know how to rehab a building. They have training programs for that, but you don't have to pay for nothing. But in our community, the Arabs will not go in Evergreen, Beverly Evergreen, Oakland, Palos Hills, Hickory Hills in Chicago because the white chamber of commerce ain't having it.
Yep. That's the truth.
They're not having it. You're not gonna come set up shop over here. So they go in those low class areas and open up liquor stores because they know what do people like. They like the blunts. They like the vape. And in the gas station, I looked at the window. I saw more cigars, more lighters than I ever seen in my life behind the counter in this area because Barack Obama, one of his homes, is 2 minutes from where I live. Elijah Muhammad's house, the late Jesse Jackson used his area. This is a historical area, but they're not gonna come in High Park. Nah. You know why? Promontory done bought it up. Promontory is like mini downtown Chicago in the historical area. So a lot of folks don't know, how does the Arab open these stores? They research where the people have the most public aid, public assistance, low to no income, and that's where they set up shop. My cousin used to work for the Arabs. I was working for the Arabs, just getting cash money because I was in school. And I watched how they did everything. And I told my cousin, I stayed there for maybe about a couple of months. She worked for them for like 10 years and she finally left and went to become a nursing assistant. But the main thing that they put in the stores, Apostle, do I have an amen corner? Is alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
cigarettes, blunts, wrapping, the paper and all that stuff. That's the biggest thing that they have. And look what it does to our community. Look what it does to our community. So a lot of them don't know that. I'm sorry to tell the truth, but hey, shame the devil. But we don't have to be stuck. This is not Lodabar. We're not in a valley of the dry bones. I'm sorry, Pastor.
And that is the truth, because again, our conversation, I want to tell everybody, our conversation is not, or any conversation that we have here on our podcast, is not to kick people when they're down. It's not to degrade people. We're not here to do that. We're not here to make people look bad. What we are here to do is shine light on what's going on. And again, I believe that this was a great conversation about the projects, because there is good people that still lives in the project, and there's some bad people that live in the project. So there's the good. You got to take the good with the bad. And I know there's a whole lot of good people that came out of the project that went to school, went to college, and was successful. And then there's the bad people that stayed in the hood and terrorized the neighborhood and trashed the neighborhood. So there's the good and the bad piece.
The terror.
So again, our conversation was about to bring, we were just here tonight to bring light on the good and the bad of living in the projects. I am going to play one more song and I am going to close out so we can get on out of here tonight. Let me play this last song.
Hey lady, my body is yearning for your love. I just can't help myself when I miss your touch, when I miss your hug, when I miss your touch, 'cause my body is yearning for you, love. See, it's just one of those things. When I remember how we first met, you used to watch me and I was watching. I want you even. Every time I saw you, girl, I felt something deep going, 'cause my body is yearning for your love. My body is yearning for your love. My body is yearning for your love. Well, it's yearning for your love. More love. When I think about it, all I do is want your some more. How could I let you go now? I'm wondering if you remember how we first met. Do you remember that first kiss we once shared in the night? Oh, yeah. We made love from the first time we spent together. How could I forget the love we used to have. Your touch, your kiss, my touch. I'm sure you miss. Every time I think about you, I can feel it in my heart now. I sit back and realize I was so far apart. I just can't get over. But I had faith in you. Oh, you're my everything. You rock my world. My body is yearning for more love. See, I have never found another one like you.
And this is going to wrap up our show for tonight. Again, let me say this before me and Dr. Sanders leave. Again, there's some good and bad people living in public housing. And I will say this, for the good people, keep doing what you are doing. Um, do your best. Don't stop what you're doing. Uh, Keep pushing forward. God sees all, and God has your back. And for the people that feel as though that they don't have the resources, or they don't have transportation um, to get out of the projects. Um, I pray that God will continually to be with you and your family, and help you in the best ways that is possible. Again, this is our show for tonight. God bless each and every one of you. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for our next conversation. Our next conversation is going to be a real good conversation. I don't want to let the cat out the bag yet, but stay tuned. Stay tuned for Power 103, the station that empowers the people, with Dr. Sanders and Dr. Morse, the station that empowers the people. Again, you all have a wonderful night. For anybody that's going to go back and listen to this broadcast, again, our intentions were not to down anyone, or to kick anybody where they're down, but our intentions are to just shine light on what's going on in the world, in our neighborhoods and cities. Again, this is Power 103, the station that empowers the people, with Dr. Morse and Dr. Sanders, the experience. So stay tuned for great conversations to come. May heaven smile upon you. May God continually to keep you and your family. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.